Area Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023, to order. Can I get a roll call of the members, please?
Andy Bailey?
Here.
Jeff Foley?
Absent.
Stacy Petticoat?
Here.
Scott Hussensberger?
Here.
Chester Vegas?
Here.
Staff members Liz Stitzel and Kat Bell are present, as well as BCA attorney Jay Moore.
Good. We do move on to the disposition of the minutes. Did anybody have any corrections that needed for those? Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We don't have any old business, do we?
Would you like?
Grant,
Never mind,
Grant,
let me revise that.
There's some old
That's
Grant's here.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Make him take over now.
Last person has to take over. Oh, shoot. All right, let's move on to the public hearings. Grant, you didn't miss much. Let's start. Is there any reason to have any of these reordered? I mean, before we start, change to the agenda because of,
Thank you. It's just- We don't think,
okay,
it's hard to tell you this, but we don't think there's anything that has an excessive amount of comment, so it
okay.
doesn't seem to be a reason to move on to the policy.
Okay, before we start, if your hearing's over, or the one that you want to be, after we're done, and you guys can move out if you want, you're more than welcome to stay. I just want to, we'll give you guys some time to leave if you need to, so feel free. Let's start with application number CC 2023-00325, docket number 13-23-SE, the petition of Jeffrey and Jennifer Fawcett requesting a special exception. Can you take us through the staff report, Liz?
I can, and I'm gonna highlight the fact that, the application after this, which is application, CC 2023-00326, docket 1423VA, is also the same applicant and related, and the two cases share a staff report. So what I'm gonna do in this case, I'm gonna go ahead and present the staff report just as one unit, but it is physically possible to approve one of these and deny the other, or, you can handle it different ways, but in the interest of time and not rereading it, so.
Yes.
All right, so the applicant is Jeffrey and Jennifer Fawcett at 1900 East Kirkland Brick Road, Frankfort, Indiana. They're requesting a special exception to operate a Class C kennel to allow them to board domestic animals, in this case, because it's a kennel, that would be dogs and cats, in a separate building than their home, but on the same parcel. They're also requesting a variance to waive required buffer landscaping because there are substantial existing trees. Both this parcel and everything around it are zoned agriculturally. The site consists of 5.88 acres. It's located on the north side of East Kirkland Brick Road in Jackson Township. It's surrounded by farmland. There's only one other residential property adjacent. It's to the west. The parcel adjacent to the east is vacant and it's owned by the petitioners. The petitioners would like approval to operate a Class C kennel and an accessory structure on the same parcel as their home. And it will be for the purpose of boarding animals while the owners of those animals are out of town for business or vacation or other travel. The petitioners are also seeking a variance, if the special exception is approved, to have the required buffer landscaping waived because there are existing trees along the west, the rear of the property, and the east, as it's actually the furthest east because they own 2 parcels. But basically, there are already trees on all 3 sides that buffering would be required on, so adding a few shrubs in addition to that would seem not to be as needed as a case where there's no landscaping there. On the second page, there's couple pictures Kat has helpfully added to this, one that shows you the 2 parcels that are in common ownership, and then one that shows you, looking from above on the aerial, which building the kennel will be inside of. It's kind of that middle building in between the house and the other pole barn. On the third page, you've got a picture from the road, and Kat has again highlighted the building where the proposed kennel is planned to go in. In terms of analyzing the request, there is a series of special exception standards that must be found to be met in section 8:12.01 of the Unified Zoning Ordinance. As follows. First, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and all the general regulations of the ordinance. Table A lists kennel class C, which is use 9.17, as having 3 supplemental standards that are contained in section 533 of the zoning ordinance. They are, first, that such facilities shall be approved by the health department and the animal control officer. Second, that they shall be at least a quarter mile from the corporate limits of any city or town. And third, that they shall be soundproofed. The first one, the health department had adopted kennel guidelines in 2006, which are very detailed and thorough. According to those guidelines and the health department's review, the health department has determined that the petitioner needs to have a separate septic system that is not shared with the house septic in order to serve the kennel. And there needs to be separate waste disposal that comes from the kennel itself. The health department requires floor drains be placed within the structure that run through it to the sewer system or the septic in this case, that is placed for that purpose. Staff reached out to the animal control officer for their approval, and it's really a case. She stated that she does approve of the request, but before they begin operations, she requires a walkthrough inspection. The petition site is over 9,000 foot from the nearest corporation limits in terms of item 2, so there's no question there that that's met. And third, in terms of soundproofing, the proposed structure is finished inside. The petitioner's been advised they'll need to consult with the health department to determine if that existing interior finish meets those requirements. I would note from the zoning standpoint also that, we would expect there to be insulation and, those kinds of things to soundproof. And make sure that animals that are confined inside the building aren't audible. So the second finding is the proposed use shall not involve an element or type of condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to any other property or persons, and shall comply with the performance standards herein. As long as the health department requirements are met, it would appear this standard is met. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties do not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. So the existing building that's been selected for the kennel, it does mesh with the area in terms of appearances. It already has electric heating and cooling in it. The petitioner states they have the interior finished and they believe that it is sufficient for soundproofing. As we noted previously, the health department will need to confirm that. And if it doesn't meet for some reason, they need to add something to make sure it is. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood. The proposed accessory structure, or I suppose the accessory structure proposed to be used, sits back off the road. It's mostly screened by the petitioner's own house and then existing trees in the front yard, and then another accessory structure and trees to the west. With the screening of the existing structures and trees, this structure can be barely seen from the road, and it does not appear to be visible at all from the residential neighbor to the west. The remaining neighboring properties are vacant of development, are used only for farming. 5, the proposed use to organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. There certainly appears to be sufficient space for off-street parking for pet owners to drop off and pick up their animals on this site, given the amount of acreage and the depth. So the standard appears to be met. And finally, for the special exception, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and shall be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So Economic Development Goal 1, Objective 4 of the 2012 Comprehensive Plan states to promote home-based businesses, to grow our own new businesses in Clinton County. A kennel is clearly in line with the comprehensive plan in terms of growing business, And the distance from the proposed facility and relationships to other neighbors and things happening in the area also appears to be sufficient, and there's buffering there as long as the approval from the health department and animal control officer are obtained. So then we're gonna move to the 3 findings for the variance. Those also have to be determined to be met in order to waive the buffer landscaping. The first one is that the proposed approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. So it does not appear that allowing them not to add additional plantings would be injurious to public health or safety, since required buffering is designed to reduce the effects of a more intense use on less intense uses, but there's not like a large neighborhood or anything adjacent that would seem to need protection, and there's already existing vegetation around the uses that are near there on multiple sides. That vegetation is actually in excess of the buffering that would be required if they put in, say, a shrub every 100 foot, you know, or whatever their buffer was. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The building being proposed to operate the kennel in is an existing structure that sits back of the road. Furthermore, with the existing other structures and the trees in combination around the perimeter, there appears to be sufficient coverage that meets or exceeds the requirements of the ordinance. 3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of property. The proposed use, if granted, is a special exception. The special exception cannot be granted unless the variance is also granted, unless they went ahead and added, because it would otherwise not meet the standards required for a Class C kennel. So if they're not able to get the variance, and they're not able to put in the buffer area, then even if we approve the special exception, it wouldn't meet the standards, so arguably that would be a hang-up. I would note, before I get to recommendation, we've had extensive conversation with both the petitioner and the health department in trying to figure out the septic and the kennel and kind of where they're at there. We have not received any communication from anyone else or letters regarding this case. So at this point in time, with regards to the special exception and the variance, the petitioners have not gotten to a point where they've been able to provide at least a septic permit. They have gotten soil tests to the health department as they updated CAT today, but they're waiting on some communication with an installer to be able to get min specs figured out. So staff would recommend to continue the application request to allow the petitioners to finish that up and be sure that they can get that septic there. However, if the board finds that the proposal in general would seem to meet and wants to go a different route, then if you choose to approve the variance and the special exception, we would recommend that you have several conditions. First, that it's only for boarding domestic animals while animal owners are in need of that. It's not for animal rescue unless they come back to the board. And 2, that before operations begin, there has to be a septic and animal control officer approval. If the variance is not granted and the applicant is not willing or able to put in the buffer yards, then a special exception would not be able to be granted. So that's kind of the framework. Generally speaking, when there's a septic question, we continue to make sure that we're not granting an approval that can't be acted upon. The health department does not expect there to be a major bump in this, but they're not quite to that point yet.
Thanks, Liz. Is a petitioner here to speak on their behalf?
We've been working with Nash and Rodney from the health department to do the septic. The soil scientist that came out and did it, he actually said he didn't see any problems. He's been doing it for 20 plus years. And so he said we have quite a bit of land in the back to put the septic. Nash actually said we could have taken and attached it to the house septic, but we really didn't want to do that. We would prefer to go ahead and put a new septic in just to make sure nothing happens to the house, you know. And so, you know, we feel like this is something that we're gonna kind of grow, and we love animals, and we had 6 dogs of our own not too long ago. The oldest one was, right now, she's 17 and a half. So our dogs or our babies, and that's what we're looking forward to do for people, is to provide extreme, exceptional care for their animals.
Cool.
And we also got kennels. The kennels we're looking at getting are commercial grade kennels that will allow us to take care of them and make it easy for us, because this is kind of going to be our business in retirement. So we want to make sure that we can do it as, you know, we get older and be able to take care of the animals.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions? That's not the petitioners. Any board discussion? You guys can have a seat.
Okay.
Unless we have questions of you, but,
No, I don't.
Did we talk about how many animals this building will handle?
So a Class C kennel by default does not have an upper limit imposed upon it. We haven't received any complaints. Now, it does have to remain soundproofed, and if you expand a special exception use, you have to come back to the board. So if they move beyond what that building can handle and they want to use additional buildings, they'll have to come back, or they want to do an addition, they'll have to come back for a special exception to expand the special exception use. But otherwise, unless the board sees a reason to restrain it, so Class B kennels are personal animals, but you can have up to, I wanna say it's 16 dogs, or twice that in cats, without, hitting the Class C, or if you're taking money, regardless of size, even if you just have a small grooming business, then you run into Class C. So no, there's not an automatic cap once you get to the largest commercial kennel size or veterinary hospital size. But if the board sees a reason or a concern that they feel they need to mitigate, then you certainly have the right to add a condition with a cap. I would encourage you to make that cap larger than what the Class B kennel would allow for personal animals, if you feel that that's a need within the neighborhood.
okay.
And I'm not sure, the petitioner may know how many runs or pens they're planning to put in that building. We haven't.
But we're gonna start out with the 6, and what we're hoping to do, as it makes money, then we can grow. So that way we don't put like a lot of our personal money into it. He had already put a lot of money into insulation, drywall, and that kind of stuff. And the lighting, we got the furnace and everything in there, so. We're also gonna hook it up, we have a generator. We're going to take and hook up like the furnace to the generator. So if the power goes out for winter, it automatically kicks on because I got a Generac. So, we're trying to think of all the things that we need to do to keep them safe.
And then we also, with that, for a backup, in case something goes out with that furnace, we got quotes in there from Jim's Heating and Cooling to put another heating source that hangs from the ceiling for a backup.
Sure.
Like I said, we're just trying to cover our bases and learn as we're going here.
For me, it's the septic. That's the hurdle for me. I think everything else I'm okay with, but we just need to know with confidence that, you look at the site, I don't think that they're gonna have any problem
Yeah.
in regards to that, but do we wanna go down that road, or is continuing to next month going to really inconvenience is everything built and ready to
No.
go?
We didn't buy the kennels because these kennels are almost 30 grand. So we don't want to purchase them
Yeah,
until we make sure everything's okay with you guys.
sure,
But we don't want to put a septic in if we can't do it either, so.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
we've talked to Mike Lannister is the one that is gonna come out and give us a quote He said he was pretty busy right now.
A lot of people are.
So I think we reached out to the list we got from the Board of Health, and there was like 10 or 12 people, and we got 2 that called back.
Yep.
So, and Mike, we chose with him and see on his time frame.
How many kennels did you say? 6. That's what I thought I heard. So does that mean 6 animals?
Yeah, for right now. And then we hope to grow, because we don't want to go in a bunch of debt, you know,
This is gonna be our retirement thing to keep us going
active and moved.
and making some additional cash.
What's the capacity then if you get in this building?
Well, I'm sorry.
The capacity.
If you use the walls and just went all the way around it, you could get 16 in there.
That said, from our standpoint, as long as they come in and deal with permitting as needed, however they reconfigure the inside of it, you know, as long as they're staying in that building and their runs are around that building, we wouldn't have them to come back to the BZA unless you put some additional condition on that said that we needed to have a checkpoint. Otherwise, the threshold for extending the special exception would be at the point at which they want to add building space or add kennel runs at another location on the property or utilize another structure, you know, where they're physically moving beyond the location they stated to the board they were gonna be using on the site.
Okay, so it's just, we're essentially granting these, variances and the special exception for the building that they're telling us to.
Yes,
And
that's what they
and
provided as a site plan.
And once they decide to go beyond that building, that's when we would, so not necessarily if they
But if they
put
wanna-
kennels inside or reconfig.
Right.
We're,
If they
we're,
wanted to reconfigure part of it for cats, if somebody had 20 cats in one side and they got, we wouldn't be like, oh
Yeah.
wait. You know, as long as it fits within the definition of kennel and it's within the space, unless you guys were to add a condition that says no cats, you know, in that example. If you add a condition, then of course, if they wanna change that, they have to come back to the board. But otherwise, right now,
I'm just
they
hearing
have not,
6
haven't offered
kennels,
a cow.
30 grand, septic system.
yeah, I know,
Okay.
we're on the same length
All
there.
right.
I really just think we ought to continue it for the next month. That would be my motion. I move to continue both applications. Can we do both of them at the same
you
time?
can just vote to continue both at the same time.
Yeah.
I'll second.
And I would note for the petitioner, just in case there's any confusion, you do not have to have a full septic installed to get past this point. You just need to have a septic permit in hand that shows that you've got the approval to install it. So just to make sure you're not trying to bite off a bigger chunk of cost or risk than what you actually need to.
Yeah, we didn't
So-
wanna put it in
Yeah.
and do the kennels until we made sure,
Yep.
so.
You don't have to do that until you get to your, you know, your permitting stage, then we have to sign off before you have animals there. For coming back to the board, you've just gotta get that plan and approval from the health department in the form of a septic permit, a piece of paper. So you have a permit fee, but you don't need to do anything beyond that until you know here.
Okay, so we're basically gonna wait on Mr. Lannister to tell us what we need, along with Rodney and Nash.
Yeah, you're gonna get approval from them and get a permit and then come back to us and,
I think the
And-
key driver is the permit.
yeah, you've gotta have the permit. Once you get the permit, you come back to us and, you know, I just don't like adding a handful of conditions, and that would eliminate one of the conditions from the variance and special exception. So we need to vote on that if we've got a second, so let's go ahead
Just
and vote.
real quick, Liz, how did
Oh, go ahead.
we establish Class C versus Class B or?
So Class C means money is exchanging hands, it's commercial or it's a veterinary clinic, which again, money is exchanging hands.
Yep.
So Class C basically means it is a commercial kennel of some sort, whether that's a vet, a boarding, a grooming, a breeding, whatever the case. Classes A and B are personal, kennels or personal dogs, but they're split by number of animals.
Yep.
8 for a Class A, and then, I wanna say it's up to 16 for a Class B. We very rarely see something that's in Class B, and Class B needs a special exception too. But it doesn't have the same soundproofing and walking through standards because they're someone's own dogs versus
Right.
when there's money
The driver
checking
is
in and
money
the public is coming in and, you know, and there's no upper cap, right? You know,
Yep,
as soon as you
yep.
reach Class C, so you start looking at how it's run more than just sheer, you know, numbers.
Yep,
So
perfect.
Classes A and B will not allow any grooming either. Correct? Any, if you're gonna do any
You automatically end up in a Class C, even if there's not numbers, when there's money exchanging.
Cool.
Perfect, thank
Are
you.
you guys ready for a roll call?
Yeah, ready for a roll call vote.
Okay, so this is to continue this to the next meeting, waiting to verify that a septic, is approved and the health department has given full approval to the kennel. So Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Brett Muller,
Yes.
Stacy Pettigo,
Yes.
Scott Hensberger,
Yes.
Chester Backus.
Yes.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions about that, I mean, I know you know where to find us, just reach out. You know, we'll have to continue coordinating with you in the health department to make sure that you're not confused or unsure what you need to do or stuck, you know, so just let us know.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Let them clear out real quick. All right, let's start with the next public hearing, which is application number CC dash 2023-00366, docket number 15-23-VA. The petition of Andy Berry. He's requesting a variance. Can you take us through the staff report, please, Liz?
Sure can. As you noted, this is petitioner Andy Berry, and he's coming with a request to waive some of the required buffer yards at the new AccuLevel facility, which is on 26. So the property itself is zoned B3, which is roadside business, and then everything else around it is zoned R1, which is rural residential, and to the west is Edna Mills. So the petition site consists of 20.241 acres of land located on the south side of State Road 26. It's just east of the intersection with North 850 West in section 29 of Ross Township. The petitioner obtained approval to rezone the site in 2019 to construct a new, larger facility for AccuLevel. He also obtained a variance in 2022 to allow gravel drives instead of asphalt. The petitioner has now completed the project except for putting in the required buffer yard plantings for the use, and he's requesting a variance to waive some of the planting requirements. There's a site plan that he provided that we passed on to the BZA as well that shows the areas that will still have the buffer yard versus the ones that will not. And that's because there's some existing plantings that meet or exceed requirements on some sides, and then there's also I'd say a berm, but it's only partially a berm and partly a natural rise in the land, you know, on one side that also obscures visibility. You can kind of see the petition site there and the zoning map. And then on the second page, there's some pictures that Kat was kind enough to take for you that show this
Put her life in
facility
her
from
own
various
What'd you say?
sides.
Oh,
On the
yeah.
second page, up at the top, there's an arrow where Kat indicates the driveway she was sitting in to the west when she took the picture at the bottom of that page. So if you drive down the road, that view will look a little funny, and that's why. So, and this is a little bit interesting situation because when this was initially going through development, we kind of talked about whether or not variances might make sense, but at the time, they were gonna try to do full landscaping, but then once they got it built out, and they kind of saw how the lay of the land was in vegetation, they would like to only put in the buffer yards where there's not something else already creating an obstruction to the line of sight. And they have actually bonded, they have a financial guarantee sitting in our office for buffer yards without the variance, because they needed to do that to get their certificate of occupancy so that they can start operations in the building. If they're able to get the variance, then they would put in what they need to meet what's been adjusted. So, they're well within their timeline to get it in, they're just trying to see if they can make an adjustment before they actually do it. So, on that note, there's 3 findings in section 203.12 of the Unified Development Ordinance that must exist to grant a variance. And they are as follows. First, the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. So the variance request would be for the southeast and northwest corners, which the site plan that was sent to the board shows. And this would not be injurious to public health or safety of the area because there's still sufficient buffering, either installed and existing, that screens the use, either by virtue of a hill that's taller than my truck, or on the other side as you go toward the road, existing vegetation as you can see in the photographs. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The surrounding properties are zoned R1, with the northwest corner of the site against the unincorporated town of Edna Mills. But along that northwest corner, there's already heavy coverage in tree plantings. And then the southeast corner is adjacent to farm ground, and there's a hill that mostly screens the building and the use from site. No complaints have been received. Now, the other 2 sides where he's putting in the buffering, as you go to the northeast, there's some housing up there, and it's kind of flat as you go out. So that's why that buffering is remaining. And then as you go to the southwest, there's a home actually down that long drive, that's back behind. And again, it's flat, and there's not really any buffering there. So he's not asking for any variance of his required buffer yards on those 2 sides. And 3, the strict application of the terms of the building ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. So, as this was initially turned in as kind of a complete waiver, and then we discussed it, staff cannot find any difficulty in the buffering requirement being met to the northeast and the southwest corner, because those 2 areas are inside of residential properties. So, we would recommend that those areas not be included in the variance request, and that buffering is installed according to the site plan that the applicant submitted, that would partially buffer and take care of those areas. But staff would find it an unnecessary standard to require the buffering to the northwest and southeast corners because of the already existing heavy coverage of trees and topography that mostly screen the building and the use from any existing residential and agricultural properties in the immediate area. And actually, we would note on this, and it kind of relates to the last case too, but this is a standard that's on our list at some point when there's time to amend a little bit to allow us to administratively substitute existing buffering for required buffering. Our ordinance doesn't allow that, so if you buy a site and you have 50 trees around one side of it and the buffer yard requirement says you need to add 10, we have to make you add the 10 unless the BZA gives you a variance. So that's something on our list to kind of modify in the ordinance. Because common sense kind of says if you have 50 trees and you need to add 10, you probably have, 50 is more than 10, right? So there's kind of that logic to take into consideration as you look at this particular petition. So consequently, staff recommends to approve the variance requests with the following conditions. First, that the 2 areas on the attached site plan that show as open without buffer yards are the only areas that are granted a variance. And 2, that the existing plantings and berming on the property that are taken into consideration as making the buffer yard requirement unnecessary cannot be removed and must be replaced with something that will grow to be comparable if they die to the extent that maintains the current buffering, or if they're damaged due to human removal, an act of God, a disaster, etc. But basically, idea being that you're not saying there doesn't need to be anything here, you're just saying what's there is good, and if something happens to what's there, then either needs to come back to the board or needs to maintain what is there in place of that, which on the back, the odds of that hill moving are slim to none, no matter what someone does. But on the front, you could have trees that are lost and end up not having the existing buffering at some point in the future. So that concludes our staff report.
Thank you, Liz. Is the petitioner there and have anything to add?
Here,
Okay. Anything to add or?
I don't know what else, what other
Okay.
words to put to it.
Okay, cool. Otherwise, I was gonna make you go up to the podium.
Yeah,
So-
I can, but I think it's been pretty well covered.
Okay, good, good. Anybody else in the audience want to speak about
Is
this?
there any way to see what's being requested or it's Oh, because I've only ever seen the original map.
Yeah.
Here, if you wanna come up here, I can show you
The question was to ask the plan for the recording is,
oh,
Yeah.
yes, thank you. Yeah,
So-
yeah, the audience member wants to see the site plan. So buffer yard is required on the sides and to the rear. So, there's an area up here that won't, and then it's gonna have it through here, fully as required, and it'll come up to the front where it's required here, and then where there's a berm back here is where the variance, so the variance is being asked for here and here, the rest of it meets the standards.
Okay, so I live in this house that's down that lane, right?
So this would be the corner
Yeah.
here
Barely-
between you and
barely.
him.
I can see the entire back part of his building from my bedroom window. So that would definitely not be sufficient. This is nothing but a field of poison hemlock. It used to be young, mature trees, but when they cleared it all out, there's nothing but weeds there now.
So I drove up here, there's definitely trees here.
There's a couple right at the entrance. Did you go
So-
back?
Yeah,
more
I
than
did,
20
I drove
feet?
all the way around, it comes partway down the drive, and there's no houses right here at all.
So my easement goes right through there. I just had to knock down at least 4 feet of poison
So-
hemlock because they were right up against.
I
the
don't have a
drive.
vote, so
No,
I
I'm
would
just
say,
saying.
no, but I would advise you to take
Yeah,
this
yeah.
and explain to them
Go
what
ahead
you're
and show-
explaining to them,
yeah.
so they can see what your input is and understand it.
Okay. So I live here.
What's your name, sir, for the
Alex
record?
Ellison.
so the building sits right here, doesn't it? About right there.
No, my building's right.
Oh, yeah.
Wait. That's
Yeah,
26 here?
That's 26. We're looking
Yeah,
north.
this is
There's
my building
26.
right there.
Okay, so you're right
So
there.
I'm right
So
there.
you're like right down in here.
So,
Okay.
like I said, I can see the entire back of the building from my bedroom window. I just had put in a dozen trees along my east wall because there's nothing between here and there. There's 3 trees right there. That's it along this whole line. So there's nothing back here. And like I said, the only thing that's here, there's a little bit of bushes right at the turn. There's a turnout actually that leads to his
Yeah,
building,
yeah,
which
yeah,
that's another story. But there's a couple trees right there, but otherwise this is all. Most of this is just here's the turnout right here. There's a couple trees right there, but this is all weeds because it was all knocked down. There's not a tree in here.
Okay. So it looks to me, according to his plan, is he's gonna install here.
I would suggest at least going to that those trees are there. 'Cause like I
Okay.
said, I can see everything from my window. They have lights that are on all night long. Anything that's going to provide any kind of buffer to block that, and I grossly underestimated the gravel. I should have been here the last meeting because it's not quiet.
Okay.
And there's trucks going in and out 11 o'clock at night. So it's not like it's a nice 8 to 5 business. I woke up to metal clanging at 6 o'clock this morning. So anything that's going to knock that noise down would be tremendously helpful.
Okay. So he's gonna install, alright. What, he's gonna install there, install here, and he's asking for a variance here, here. I think, what was your name again, sir?
Alex Ellison.
Alex wants him to go to at least here. And that was his request, so he would like this area to be included.
And I can see, I mean, understand.
Okay,
Like I said, I already put in a dozen trees myself. I would hope that they would do something similar.
okay. Alright,
So essentially it'd be the north and the west side that he'd like to have the buffer yard.
so yeah, I mean, it's,
Yes.
yeah, the north and the west, and not real concerned about the east, I guess.
Because he's down in here.
Mm-hmm. He's off the page about where your finger is, Scott.
How much difference is that than what's being proposed right now, Andy?
Okay, let me show the petitioner. You can come on up. We'll show what he was saying. So he wants to go to about right here as far as where he would like the buffer to go.
Okay.
And I think he also wants this buffered, but
All right. This is a pretty tall hill back here.
so deep into it, site level.
Okay,
If we need to.
okay. Okay. All right, well, why don't you sit down? I want to look at an aerial a little bit more on it myself, sorry. Expand it out a little bit. Any other discussion? Okay,
Understanding the north, the line of trees there will stay.
No trees are being removed.
yeah, no trees will be removed.
I too was away from this morning.
Sure.
Sorry, what was your name for the record?
Andy, could you come up and help me understand a little bit here from this one picture?
Okay, wait a second. No, no, go ahead. Wrong Andy.
So, I assume this is west looking
East.
east,
Correct.
correct?
Yep.
And so this would be the west side where he's asking for some buffering. This is probably a turnout from the lane where it goes back to his house. Is that true?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, what we was, what on here,
Okay,
what
So-
we was proposing
well,
is,
watch out for the mic right there. You got your paper on.
I'm sorry,
Sorry, it's just picking up the noise, that's all.
is what we was proposing, if I can.
Sure, yep.
Is starting like right here and going down. And back is what matches up with this. Do you see what
Okay,
I'm saying?
mm-hmm, yep.
So it'll be roughly right there.
Now, he's saying there's only a few trees up here, and I guess is he saying he wants to go all the way back
Yeah,
there?
this is what this tree, I mean, there's some stuff right here you can see in that picture.
Okay. And then, now, this would be the north side here, is that true?
No, that's south.
This is the north
Yeah,
side?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, this is the southeast.
Okay, all right. So that would be the north side. So we can't really
Yep.
see there, the hill or what's there now.
That goes up to 26. State
Okay.
Road 26.
So I think it may be here.
I'm not, okay, there's the building.
Yeah.
That's
See.
looking west, it says State Road.
No, that's,
I'm not sure where that's at.
that's looking from 26.
Okay,
That's looking from State Road 26.
that would be actually
To-
after
to
you
the
pass your
south.
driveway then, you're,
Yeah, you'd be
Okay.
looking to the south.
okay.
Yep.
So then these are the trees here that he's talking about, on the east that already exist.
I,
Or maybe that's what you're talking about.
yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And these go back to,
Here,
okay.
yeah.
And you wanna let this go and then you go from here out, is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Is that the driveway? Is that where that picture's taken from?
That's the driveway going back to the residence.
Yeah, that's
Not
what
the
I
driveway
thought.
to
And
this.
it's kinda like the little cutout where it used to go into
Right.
a farm field before
Right.
you guys
Yep.
started your site. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then, okay,
so
so
that's
my
not-
other question would be, and either one of you guys can probably answer.
You done?
Yeah, I think so, thank you. Andy.
Sorry,
No, you're
sorry,
fine.
Chester.
No, no, you're fine.
Is, do you have an easement to go on that drive, or who has an easement? I just wanna grasp that too while I'm,
My understanding is the easement, my property is behind those three bids, so that.
so you have the easement to go onto him to use that as your driveway from 226, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Okay, Fun times. I know.
Did you want that?
Okay.
I mean, how many more trees would that be?
Some of those are shrubs, I think some are trees. I don't know how to help you with that.
Yeah.
I just didn't know. I mean, I know they're, I mean, expense
Because
wise.
there's so many for every, so far. Yeah, so we've got shrubs and, evergreens that are in this, the evergreens on the inside and then the line of shrubs are on the outside to meet the requirement. Let me just try to scale this off. So if this goes here, it goes down here. You're looking at about 4 more trees to get to the north roughly, and then I'm just gonna hazard a guess, 20 or 30 shrubs. And then I don't know how far across he wants to go here, but if I kind of take this and I bring it down here, I'm seeing about, 4, and I'm gonna guess 20 or 30 shrubs on the outside. And then I didn't see how far he wants to go this way, but I just do the same thing, kind of.
It was pretty much about right there.
To
where
the
that
top
one-
of the
yeah,
hill?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if he's going that way, now that way is, I'm gonna guess it's gonna add
It's all
another,
essentially
maybe
double.
10 trees and 100 shrubs. I'm just making a guess, but the shrubs are nearly continuous, and then the trees are spaced, every so often, so.
So, I'm not sure I understand the language. It says on the attached site plan that shows as open.
Yeah, so here, Andy, could you pass me
Oh,
that site
sure,
plan
sure,
for a
sure.
moment? So what Kat was expressing is that staff recommended only granting a variance in the areas shown without buffer yard, and that he should be required to install the buffer yard in the 2 areas where they're showing. Now, obviously, if the board wishes to change that, you'll have to specify what's happening, in a way that we can kind of understand it. So like you were saying, if you're gonna do the whole south or the whole west side, something that lets us know what we're looking for, and I think you explained to Andy what you're talking about too, so.
I mean, there's 2 ways to kind of go. As far as I'm concerned, we either don't grant the variance and require Mr. Berry to put in the required buffer, which he's already posted a bond for. That money's sitting there. The other way is I think we probably need to compromise and add more to that. So how do we navigate through that? Those are my 2 observations, because obviously we have some neighbors here that feel that the buffer needs to be followed.
What type of business is it? I don't recall. So it is foundation repair.
Well, it seems reasonable to take into account what's already existing as a buffer yard. If it is weeds, like, help me with your name. Alex says, then,
We'll get that next week.
we need to replace it with buffer yard. And, the buffer yard was part of the request to begin with. Where there is already something existing, that's great. I don't see why we need to add that additional burden. Where it's not, I think it's
Well, we
only
don't
fair.
have to on that, because it
Yeah,
will
right.
already be part of it. so.
Right. Where it's not there and it was set up to be requested, I think we need to put that in.
If I understand correctly the conversation, one way to say that might be that prior to put the entire buffer yard in on the west side up to the existing trees, there in the front, including the area that was shown up open on the original. And then on the south side, then there you're gonna have to specify it's the whole south side, 3/4 of the south side, whatever that is. But go ahead then and grant the variance, on the section that's shown as open on the east side towards the farm field. And then he'll have it to install there in the front corner on the east.
I guess I view it as we got 2 folks that have concerns, and we're wanting to change the original plan. I guess I'm not inclined to.
Well, no, the original plan was to have buffer on the entire the entire property to begin with,
A
Scott.
consultant had been hired to do the landscaping, and they were kind of in a rush to get their permits, and we'd explained, because they were like, there's existing stuff here, we were like, well, you can request a variance, and they said, nope, we'll just design it, and the applicant wasn't fully aware that was kind of what had occurred, and then when he got to the end and he was complete and requested a CFO, he discovered he needed to install a full buffer yard before he could move in, so then he went ahead because he needed to be setting up shelves and starting to move in there, he went ahead and bonded what the consultant had drawn, but then he wanted to come back to see if he could reduce some of it where there was already some existing buffering, so that's kind of how that transpired, by my understanding.
Okay.
Alex, what do you request, the request for the south, for the north side? Are you requesting the whole north side be turned into a buffer yard?
Between the building and the road, doesn't matter to me.
Well, the north side would be the back side of the
No,
building.
the north side is between the building and the
Road.
South side.
The south
I'll
side.
get it
Yeah,
straight,
so-
south
yeah.
side. I'm glad somebody's here to get
The
my,
entire south side would be preferable, yes. Like I said, I can see his entire building from just about every room in my house.
and is there, Andy, is there anything that makes that request, not valid the whole way, or how should I say that?
You can,
Uh,
you don't have to grant a full variance, so if you want to require part of something, that's completely the board's discretion.
Yeah, well, so I'm kinda asking you, is there something already in place on the south side?
Oh, you're asking that Andy, not that Andy.
Yeah,
I apologize.
Yeah.
So,
and could you step up to the mic just so we get you recorded? I'm sorry.
so on the southeast corner, it's probably, that gravel lot's probably about into a roughly a 9-foot hill, I'm guessing, something like that. And so putting a buffer, I mean, with the grade and everything, planting trees on that slope and maintaining that's gonna be a challenge with the way it is, so. Because it's a pretty good cut into the side of the hill to make that site, that gravel lot level.
So,
There are about 3 trees in the southeast corner. Go right up to those trees, okay. Past that, I mean, like I said, there's farmland back there, I can't see past those trees, but an aerial shot should show there's 3 or 4 mature trees right there.
you can see how good I am with directions, so.
Okay. Let's look at this, which is essentially what he's got here. I mean, when you start looking at, here's these mature trees.
Yep.
It's right here. It's almost, yeah, to the mature trees, everything that way, which he's required to put buffer on.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then on this side here.
And then he wants,
for a few.
yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, there's those mature trees are right there, as you can see in that aerial. That's where he's stopping. So that's what Alex is saying, is he wants buffer to there, which that agrees with it. So then Andy wants to not have to put his buffer yard here, which complies with that. And then we'll install here, which essentially buffers the resident to the northwest. So the only area that we're really talking about now
I think so.
is this northwest side, correct, Alex? This, because here's these mature trees. He's putting buffer here.
Does not look correct. The trees that I'm talking about are way far, they're almost in the southeast corner. There's nothing right there.
Oh, sorry.
Your phone's right there.
Where's my phone?
Right there.
It's-
Oh, it's right there. Southeast corner.
His password doesn't work too long.
Yeah. Well, then what is this clump of
Green.
green that we see on the map then? Come here, Alex.
Unless he's talking about the line on the far side of the farm field.
See, there's this right here. Is that what we're talking about? Because here, whoop,
Nope, sorry.
you're fine. Where are we at now? There's Ed Mills. Okay.
Somewhere in Clinton.
So you're here,
Mhm.
and then this group of vegetation there that's almost directly south of the building, almost more that way, more to the west.
So this is not a recent picture because those trees don't exist.
Okay.
That's
Has
a
he?
I don't-
2022 flyover.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's there.
Okay.
If there are trees there, there's maybe one or two.
Okay.
That does not look that way. Like I said, there's nothing
Okay.
from here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then that doesn't work.
Yeah, we were hopeful they were gonna leave those trees in, and then when they went down, we
Okay.
were disappointed.
Takes us back to all this.
Yeah.
Does he have to plant on the hill itself?
So technically, the buffer area just has to go at the perimeter of the property, but most businesses, like let's say they have 80 acres, most businesses don't choose to put their buffer yard at the perimeter of the 80 because it's bigger.
Because it's bigger.
Most of them bring it closer, but he could move that buffer yard further out or further in if he wished to, that's entirely his discretion, but it's pretty unusual for a business to run it in the middle of a farm field if they can farm it instead. It would be more typical to see this in most businesses where they bring the buffer yard up to the actual used area, not the perimeter of the property, but, they technically could change that if they wanted to, it's just not what they've proposed. And I think that's probably for expense reasons, not just them, but any business, and the farmer wouldn't be able to farm it, cause there'd be, you know, a random row of shrubs right in the middle of the tillable.
Well, I think we need to do something on the south side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out how we need to motion or make a motion to make that work.
So in one sense, he almost has a berm where he has the parking lot cut out. And a berm is almost the equivalent of a buffer yard in some aspect from the standpoint of
I
screening.
would say that at least on the corner, when you're standing on that southeast corner, that berm is in excess of a 36-inch shrub buffer yard with
Yeah.
a tree every
Yeah,
50 or 100 foot, you know, I mean, shrubs don't usually get to 9 foot tall,
Right,
so
right.
that berm is, and it's probably not gonna move, but it does taper down as you go across the back of the building. I couldn't tell you exactly where it tapers off, but certainly by the time you get to the other corner, it's completely flat. So, but when you look like that side where it's open there to the east, that's all got a pretty good berm along it, they've cut in for the parking lot, and it kind of tapers off as you look over the south side. But as far as telling you how far across the building, it's more than 36 inches, which would be what a shrub would be, that I can't tell you off the top of my head.
So, just trying to think how we can word this. On the south side, can we start from the west and go toward the east until we hit, let's say, 5 foot of berm space, or the equivalent of 5 foot of berm, or
We can
5
measure
foot of.
that.
I like that.
That,
Yep, so anywhere there's less than 5 foot of cut down into the parking lot, then there
Right.
needs to be buffer yard
right,
above it. It's a good way of saying it.
okay. And then full on the east side until we get to where there is some existing trees on the north side, northwest side. See if I can get my directions straight.
Hang on, let me make sure I've got buffer on south, from southwest to 5 foot tall. And, you're saying buffer on the east as shown in his site plan?
Yeah, on the east side until we get, I got it, no, hold on, so this is west, east, west.
Yeah, the
This
east
is the west
side
This is
is
west.
away from,
Yeah, the east side, we're not even
yeah, so
talking
the
about.
east
The west-
side is just as shown on the site plan, you're not gonna,
Yeah.
okay.
The west side is what we're talking about, where we go from the north edge, from the south edge northward to the existing trees.
Southwest
So
to
south
existing,
to trees.
So if you have, do you have the equivalent written down of what it would take to make the motion?
I believe I do.
Okay,
The
So-
only thing that you haven't mentioned is whether or not you're gonna require him to, maintain the existing vegetation to the front, should it.
Yeah.
I think that's the.
sure. we would-
Should it take damage, which it may or may not, having just been through a tornado, sometimes you don't expect things that come along, so.
Do you find that reasonable, Andy? Yeah, that's fine. Okay,
Is that better, Alex? Yes. Okay, cool.
we want to make sure both parties, we don't want harm to any parties if we can avoid it. Okay, so in this case here, see, I need to do the second part here. I'd make a motion to approve application CC 2023-00366, docket number 1523 VA, according to the findings of the staff reports, which are incorporated in the motion by reference with the conditions that we specified.
That we maintain the existing trees, that a buffer is placed, the buffer is placed in the south, from the southwest corner to where the berming is at least 5 foot tall. And buffer is placed on the east as shown in the site plan, and on the west, from the southwest corner forward to the existing trees.
That's reasonable, Andy?
Yep.
Alex? Okay,
I second that. And any more discussion?
No,
All right, good. I'll take a roll call vote when you guys are ready.
I'm almost there.
You're fine.
All right. Andy Bailey,
Aye.
Grant Muller,
yes.
Stacy Pettigrew,
Yes.
Scott Hutzensberger,
Yes.
and Chester Bankus.
yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Okay. All right. So next, two public hearings are on the same staff report, just like the first one of the night. So we'll take them together. It looks like we need to, if we're going to pass the special exception, then we need to look at the variances, correct? And not have,
Actually, these are
Are
all
they
independent. You
independent?
could deny the special exception and still approve the variances, and that would still have an
Okay.
effect.
okay. Okay, cool. Well, let's do application CC 2023-00368, docket number 16-23-SE, and application 2023-00369, docket number 17-23-VA, which is a petition of Good Oil Company, which are asking for a special exception, and also 6 variances. Liz, can you take us through the staff report, please?
I can. So this is located at 7701 West State Road 28. So more generally, that's the BP gas station there at I-65 and 28. And the special exception request is to expand a special exception use. So a fueling station is a special exception use in the B3 zoning district. There's already a fueling station there. As they're moving everything back, they want to add one additional canopy, which is an expansion of special exception use, so that's what they're asking for in the special exception. And then there's 6 variances, which I'll detail in a few moments, but they're all from the State Road 28 aesthetic overlay district standards regarding some various elements of the site that they're having some practical difficulties in meeting. So as noted, this request is located at the southeast corner of the I-65 and State Road 28 interchange. The site is zoned B3 right now, but it is part of another filed application to be rezoned into a larger planned unit development that's been passed from the Plan Commission, is currently waiting on the county commissioners for a hearing. The development plan application has been filed with the Plan Commission, and it's currently continued. That's for only the gas station. But there were a few areas that were found that require BZA approval or revision by the applicant before the Plan Commission can approve that development plan. Since the Plan Commission has no ability to grant variances from the zoning ordinance, all they do is look to make sure what's planned meets the rules. So in this particular case, unlike many, each of these 7 different requests is entirely independent of the others. So you can deny or approve them independently without affecting the others. That said, for the sake of time, I'm gonna go through them all and then let you decide what you want to do with them at the other end. So the site has open farm fields to the east and to the south, I-65 to the west, and then State Road 28 and an abandoned gas station sit to the north. This area is in active flux. The Bandera Point development is working through the zoning approval process now, and it will be a new planned unit development that this station will be a part of. The rest of that development will extend to the east and the south and include an entertainment venue, campgrounds, wineries, shopping, restaurants, park areas, and other items and amenities. The commissioners have awarded a road project in conjunction with NDOT that is about to commence. In fact, I think they might have done the groundbreaking yesterday, where State Road 28 will be redesigned in front of the station into a roundabout, and the county road across 28 will be rerouted around the back of the lots there and back into the roundabout, eliminating the rather dangerous current intersection where it sits so close to the entrance exit ramp. That will also mean the gas station across the road for the first time will be a viable lot for redevelopment and will eventually be redeveloped along with the field to the north in the coming years. So the plan for the gas station itself is to upgrade the look and the size of this particular gas station, and that's part of the overall development vision, both for what's happening around here and what ultimately is hoped to happen to the north on the other side of the road, and trying to make this station have a higher end presence. So first off, the special exception request, as I noted, is specifically to add a second gas fueling canopy, and that canopy will sit where the current convenience store sits right now. The current store will be torn down after a new, significantly larger store is built behind it. So there's just a diagram there, and it may be a little bit hard to see, but if you come back from State Road 28, there's a dotted line on kind of I don't think it's technically a rectangle. I've forgotten the name of that shape, but it sits at a little bit of an angle. You can see that's the original canopy. It sits close to the road that if you drove out there now you'd see. And then behind it, another dotted line, and it actually shows fuel pumps. That's where the new canopy would sit. And then that box where the convenience store is, that's not the current convenience store. That's a much larger one that's moved back entirely behind the one that's there now. So in terms of the variances, there's 6 of them that are being requested. The first is from Unified Development Ordinance 403.16 B2 and F. This is a variance request from the foundation planting requirement, as the applicant would like to place sidewalks on all 4 sides of the building with parking outside that and no landscaped area within it. The second variance is from Unified Development Ordinance 403.16 B3, and that's a request for a partial variance to allow some unscreened HVAC units. The reason is this site will be putting the HVAC on the roof and will have parapets. But State Road 28 is significantly elevated due to going over 65. And like NHK, when you're at the top of the 28 overpass, you are gonna see to the top of this building unless you put like 40-foot parapets on it, which starts to kind of look ridiculous otherwise. So that's the reason for that request. The third one is Unified Development Ordinance 403.21A1. There's a little bit of a conflict in our State Road 28 overlay, but it asks for a roof over refuse storage enclosures, but modern dumpsters with covers are typically dumped with a truck that comes in and grabs them and lifts them up. That's impossible to do if there's a roof on top of where the dumpster sits. So they would like to just have the walls and the gates and not the roof on top. And then from UDO 524, that's a variance request for a lighting fixture to sit less than 3 times its height from a property line. From UDO 524.06D, they're requesting a complete variance to light all sides of all canopies for the gas station canopies, whereas the 28 ordinance now may be greater than 20 foot. So I've inset here a picture just to help you guys understand a little bit about what's happening, and I've just tried to label where things are at. So you can see where it says light pole, there's a light pole that's going to be sitting, they're gonna tear out the concrete that's gravel there now, and they're putting in full State Road 28 berming and plantings along 28, and then they're putting a light pole, it'll be 60-some foot in from their property line, but because the light pole is 25 foot tall, it's not at least 75 foot from the property line, so that generates the challenge there. I've noted the curb return, which is over there on the east side. The county's actually installing that, my understanding is, as part of the redevelopment project for the cut, but it's part of this development, so it's in here. The refuse containers will sit behind the new landscaping and buffering. There'll be 3 of them, they'll have 6-foot walls and gates, but that's where there would be no roof. And then the building itself, I've labeled as foundation plantings and HVAC because both of those variances are relative directly to that structure. So first, in order to approve the special exception request, there's a series of findings that have to be found to be met. So the first is that the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and all general regulations of the ordinance. If the BZA grants the special exception to expand the special exception use, as fueling stations are a special exception use in this district, then the use will conform. There are a list of standards in UDO 505 that fueling stations must conform to, and this proposed expansion meets or is able to and planning to meet all applicable standards. So those are things like the minimum acreage you have to have, the minimum amount of road frontage you have to have, those kinds of things. So none of them were issues, so I didn't list all 6 of them. And in some cases, gas stations can have rental trucks like U-Hauls if they get additional approvals. So a couple of those standards relate to where you can and can't park those. This station doesn't do a U-Haul based business here, so they weren't applicable. Secondly, 811.01B, the proposed use shall not involve any element or cause any condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to other properties or persons, and shall comply with performance standards herein. So this fueling station predates zoning, so it is assumed to have a special exception approval that it would have had to get if it had started after zoning was enacted in Clinton County. This has been the only station at 28 and 65 for a very long time, and the last time it actually came through a series of hearings with this board was when the subway was added, and they actually upgraded the facade from what it originally was to what it is now. Most of the surrounding land is zoned B4, and it is owned by the same developer that owns the fueling station. These substantial updates that these variance requests are part of an overall plan to redevelop the quadrant of the interchange. No complaints have ever been received in my 17 years about the fueling station itself. However, many residents complain about the dangerous entry off State Road 28. I drive that regularly too. There's somewhere between 5 and 6 entrances within a very short distance in the blind hill over the overpass. So the redevelopment that is occurring will eliminate 2 of the BP's current entrances off of 28. The remaining one will be right turn only. The roundabout will then go to a county road to the south, and they'll have 2 new entrances off that county road. And then the county road and the old gas station entrances on the north side will also be eliminated and brought in from the backside into the north side of the roundabout. So that all is gonna be cleaned up between the county, NDOT, and the redevelopment by the time all the dust settles. Probably literally being its construction. So all performance standards are or will be complied with. And I would note, well, it's not part of the conversation here, but it's something that you might be curious about. They will be paving all of the legal non-conforming truck parking in phases that sits across the front. So that'll actually be a substantial improvement that will happen as part of the redevelopment, both of the station and of the planned unit development. So the third finding is that the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped, so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties does not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. So other than the current gas canopy that sits there now, everything else is moving back further from the roads. We're adding intense landscaping that doesn't currently exist between the station and the road, and 2 of the current access points on 28 are being eliminated. This will tie into that new north-south road, which will also have landscaping on that side and will serve the development happening behind it. The truck parking will be paved. The existing station will be upgraded throughout in appearance and layout. So it would follow that once all these upgrades are made, whatever effect may occur on values will be lesser than the station that's there now, because the appearance, the layout, and the landscaping will all be substantially upgraded. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood. So again, the gas station is being integrated fully with the planned unit development and the roundabout being developed alongside it. It would not appear that the request to add a canopy detracts from the overall goals of the surrounding developments that are moving forward. There are no adjacent homes, and this is a business area with business zoning in all directions because of the interchange that we predict to see increased development in the coming years. Large gas stations and convenience stores are an expected and normal use adjacent to and in the environment of an interstate exit ramp. 5, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic on adjacent streets. So they've included with the added canopy traffic flow diagrams, they do meet all county standards and widths for circulation. The interaction with the adjacent streets will actually be significantly better because people will no longer be able to turn in and swirl on all sides of the canopies. Right now, as I mentioned before, you've got that blind hill and all the driveways, and that'll be eliminated. And then they've met, I believe it's 24 foot wide for 2-way traffic between the stations canopies plus the 2 vehicles of stacking space. We would think that this finding is definitely met, not only met, but substantially improved compared to what's there before. And 5, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan really does not specifically or generally refer to fueling stations, and honestly, my guess is because being that automobiles have been in use for 100 years, we've all just kind of accepted that there's something that exists, not something that you go out necessarily campaigning for. There's something that's just there. So that may be because we just sort of look at a fueling station as a necessary evil if we want to drive cars. But it's not usually something you center your development around as a focal point like you would a piece of architecture or an entertainment venue. But that said, under Land Use Goal 3, there is a general goal that says that we should designate cohesive, attractive commercial areas that meet the needs of the city, town, and county residents. So because this fueling station is being redeveloped to upscale it substantially, and the added canopy is part of upscaling it into an attractive commercial area that's cohesive with the development plans around it, that would seem to be the most applicable goal within the comprehensive plan. This is also the closest gas station for a number of county residents, and it is the only location after dark that still provides fuel in the southwest quadrant of the county. There is a gas station in Colfax, but it is not 24/7. This station also provides most of the fueling needs for the interstate, which is because it's right next to the off-ramps, and that helps minimize traffic that would add congestion if it was wandering through the nearby towns and cities in search of fuel because it couldn't find that fuel right off the interstate. So that concludes the special exception findings, which staff feel are met. And then I'm gonna move to the variance findings, unless you would like me to pause and skip to the special exception recommendations, so you don't have to remember all that. It's up to the board.
I say that we skip to the recommendation
Okay,
and we'll
let me
come
do
back to
that,
the
let me do the
variance.
special exception, then we'll come back to the variances. So with regards to the special exception, staff would recommend approving the expansion request to add the additional canopy.
Good. So, does the petitioner have anything to add to that?
Just stand up. So, good evening. My name's Jason Neighbors. I work for Good Oil. I'm joined with Michelle Thomas and Wyatt Good. They're both executives in the company. Like I said, I'm their director of maintenance and construction, so I handle all their construction projects. So, if you guys have any questions at all, I'm here to answer those. If you have any operational questions, it'd probably be Michelle. But yeah, really, I filed this just to improve our, serving our customer, really, adding additional fueling stations will help alleviate a lot of the traffic flow, especially around the site. And it'll make it a nicer place to pull in and out, basically.
Okay. Good. Is there any comment on the special exception? Any board discussion? Okay. I don't see any reason not to approve this special exception, so I'll make the motion. I get my deal here. I move to approve the application CC 2023-00368, docket number 16-23-SE, according to the findings in the staff report, which were incorporated in the motion by reference.
I'll second it.
I'll take a roll call vote when you guys are ready for the special exception only.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Stacy Pettico,
Yes.
Scott Hutchinsberger,
Yes.
and Chester Bennington.
Yes.
Okay. That gives you a break, Liz.
I appreciate it.
All right, let's dive into these variances then.
Okay, so coming back to findings, there's 3 findings that must exist in order to grant variances, and I'll go through them one at a time. And I'll apologize, this will take a little longer because there are 6 variances. So, first, that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. So there's 6 variances requested. Most of them don't appear to be injurious or even terribly notable in any way. The limited possible visibility of the HVAC equipment by traffic at the top of the overpass is unlikely to be of much notice. A lack of roof over the trash enclosures for dumpsters to be easily emptied will not be notable, given the enclosures are 6 foot tall. It's unlikely anyone who didn't review this will even notice the 25-foot tall light pole that's between 40 and 50 from a property line instead of 75. And it's doubtful that anyone even wonders what a curb return radius is when they're entering off of a road. The county commissioners have also designed it to be about a 20-foot return, so it's possible it may only be slightly over that allowable amount if it's over at all. However, people will notice that the surround on the building is a sidewalk, but they probably won't know it should have had a foundation planting without a variance. There will be landscaping around the building, just not on the foundation, so it doesn't seem that a lack of a foundation planting is physically injurious in any way. The canopy lighting is the only item that may have an injurious effect of any kind. When speaking to the observatory about the canopy lighting, they expressed concern about the request and about the accumulation of small unneeded excesses over time, adding up in light to losing their view of the Milky Way, which is what happened to them in Tippecanoe County when they signed the interlocal agreement to move to Clinton County to Camp Colum, and both the city and the county agreed to guard the night skies, and they are the 3rd largest observatory in the state. When the CNG station down the road made a similar request, they were limited only to internal lighting, only lighting behind dark colors, not whites or yellows, only lighting the logo or the minimum needed to identify the fueling station, and only lighting the canopy sides that actually offered a clear identification benefit from off-site. In CNG's case, that was only some of the sides, and they were in a green and blue logo. Good Oil's request is for a complete variance to light all 4 sides of all 3 canopies completely, which would include some backlit white. Staff has a concern this may have a negative effect and maybe more than the minimum needed to allow for identification. Two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. So again, this is an area in flux with the arrival of water and sewer. There's already a fueling station here, and the redevelopment is enlarging and upscaling it. Other than the current gas station, everything else is moving back further from the roads. Access points from 28 are being eliminated and substantial landscaping is being added. It ties into the new north-south road and interfaces with the planned unit development and the roundabout. Truck parking will be paved, the existing station will get an upscaled appearance and layout, which should have a better effect on values than what's there now. Most of the surrounding land is actually owned by Good Oil as well and is part of future developments. The only request, again, that may have a negative side effect is the request for a complete waiver of the lighting limitation on the outsides of canopies, including white lighting. And this request would be out of line with how we've handled other station canopies and may, as noted, turn out to be of concern and effect to the observatory. But additionally, there are locally white backlit areas in particular, as well as other lighting colors, may create added glare for drivers on State Road 28 and the new county road, particularly for those with astigmatism, which 1 in 3 people have. For those not familiar, 1/3 of the population, when they see a light at night, instead of just seeing a light with, maybe a little bit of blurriness around it, what they see is either 2 lines that come out from the light or a series of lines that come out from the light and extend through their field of vision. And the more lights you add, the more lines you get. Oftentimes, if it's rainy or there's any kind of moisture added to the situation, that gets even worse. And one of the reasons for our lighting ordinance, besides the observatory, is also to limit the effect on drivers in nearby properties and keep light centered where it's needed. The third item is the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. So in terms of practical difficulties, the applicant has really clear practical difficulties on several of their requests. The HVAC is possibly due from the overpass because of the large difference in natural elevation. The roof over the refuse storage containers would make it very difficult to actually dump the dumpster and haul the trash away, given the way we do that today. The lighting fixture would obstruct the entrance drive area if it was moved further from the property line. If it's eliminated, it would leave the entrance dangerously dark, as there would be no illumination where vehicles are coming in and out. Shortening the light pole would cause it to hit the top of trucks, which are turning in, as this is also a diesel fueling station on the back side. On the foundation variance, it's harder to find a complete practical difficulty justifying 100% waivers, especially since state law specifically notes that financial difficulty is not considered practical difficulty. There is a partial practical difficulty with regards to the fact that the existing canopy that's there now is remaining, and our zoning ordinance does have minimum requirements like 2 vehicle stacking spaces per pump and drive widths of 24 foot between canopies and other canopies in the property line, and canopies of buildings. So that does push things kind of together. And the ordinance would say if you have parking adjacent, that you would need a 10-foot wide foundation planting. And if you tried to add one, there's diesel canopies back behind and the backside of the site, you would begin to have a space problem. Additionally, where the ADA parking is planned and there's individual ramps for people to come up onto the sidewalks, a foundation planting there might obstruct safe turning of wheelchairs and restrict the sidewalk more than what they could easily navigate. That said, staff cannot find a practical difficulty with adding a 3 to 5 foot wide, kind of whatever the depth of the door bump out is, intermittent plantings along the foundation or permanent raised planter boxes and benches on the north and the east sides of the building where they do not interfere with ADA access or doors. And then, as terms of the lighting variance, again, staff cannot identify a practical difficulty justifying a complete waiver. We can see a practical difficulty in that, given the location of the property with roads on 3 sides and being that it is a fueling station, it may be hard to identify, especially at night, where the canopies are and where you're going without any lighting whatsoever. But beyond some basic lighting of the sides facing the right-of-ways, limited to logos, and some internally lit colored signage, it's hard to justify why all 4 sides of every canopy should get a variance to be completely lit. So with that in line, and the applicant was aware of kind of the staff report direction, so there was some conversation here, and I'm sure they'll represent their standpoint as well, but I'm gonna separate these out in kind of 3 different groups. So first off, staff would recommend approving 4 of the variances as requested, specifically UDO 403.16B3 for the HVAC, 403.21A1 regarding the roof over the refuse, 524, which is the light pole setback, and I would note that does fully meet the lighting ordinance in terms of 0 bleed out onto the road right of way. It's just a positioning issue. And 308.07, which is the curb return. With regards to UDO 403.16B2 and F, staff would recommend approving a partial variance and reducing the foundation plantings to a lesser width than the required 10-foot adjacent to parking, maybe 4 foot or something a petitioner feels they can provide within the design, or maybe a raised planting, kind of see what they feel on that. And then allowing the foundation plantings to be reduced to only placing those plantings along 50% of the north and east sides of the building's linear foot, meaning that overall half of the linear frontage along the north and east will need to have foundation plantings rather than the entire distance around the building. That would then allow the applicant to space those plantings around things like the ADA parking while still providing them in some areas. And then finally, the variance from UDO 524.06D. Again, staff would recommend approving a partial variance similar to the CNG down the road to only allow colors to be lit, and they would need to be internally lit, only logos and possibly a minimal stripe in a color on that canopy that faces road right-of-way areas. So to staff, that would appear to be for the very front canopy, the northeast and west, for the rear gas canopy, the east and west, and for the diesel canopy, the east. There will be a landscaping buffer yard and a drainage area between this and I-65. So with the height of the canopies, the large sign is giving you visibility from I-65. It's not the same. Then you're gonna have landscaping and the PUD behind it. So that's kind of an internal one as well. The applicant would also like to request that on the diesel canopy, they could have only their good to go logo illuminated on the west side. And staff has no objection to that as long as it's internally lit, colored, and limited only to the logo. I believe the reason for that is the trucks are gonna be coming around the back side, and at night that's very dark. So it just helps highlight where it is they're headed to specifically. So in short, a lighting variance on the canopy should be the minimum needed to identify the station without white or yellow that's brighter or excessively illuminated or anything that will tend to glow upward and outward. And I'm happy to clarify that if it becomes confusing, but that sums up our recommendations on the variances.
Thank you, Liz. That was a lot. Does the petitioner have any comments on the variances?
So I appreciate you guys being patient. I know it's a lot in one shot. I'll only refer to the 2 that we're asking for partials, right?
Okay.
We would really like full on the rest of them, but the 2 partials that Liz referred to. So with the canopy lighting, I'm more than willing to work directly with Liz and Area Plan and the observatory to come to an agreement on, whatever we can get on there will be fine. The executives are okay with it too. We've already discussed this, so I'll work directly with them and the observatory, make sure everybody's happy, and we'll do the minimum of what we can do to get it up there. Just so you know, this is being rebranded to Amico, so it'll have like some nicer looking imaging as well. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed the Amico we have here in the middle of town. It's got those nice buttons that look sharp. So that's what's going out there. For the second one, I have already added or had the civil engineer add the foundation plantings. Liz just got those yesterday, so.
I did not get a chance to look.
Yeah, so we did accommodate the 5 feet around the north and the east already. It's already in the site development plan. So if you guys have any other questions for myself or the executives, just let us know.
Okay.
And I would note, if they're doing 5 foot, they still will need a variance because the requirement would be 10. So you would still need to grant a partial variance, and then I haven't looked at those, but if that's not continuous around the foundation, you would still need to figure out that percentage that's covered.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other discussion on the variances for this application? I don't see any board discussion.
No, I don't.
I guess mine would be, so they said that they've got 5, let's just make it 4 like the staff report. That would be
And
kind
they
of
can
the
always
way.
exceed it if they.
Yeah,
want to
I mean,
stick with
that's
it.
kind of my thought, and then do the 50%
Okay.
kind of
And
would
then
be
they can-
what,
Yep.
can
As
we?
long as, just to make sure what you submitted to me does exceed
It
or
does.
meet that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does. Yeah,
Okay.
it-
Just
it-
wanna make
Yeah,
sure.
we just want to make sure, yeah, I want to make sure that
I
you
don't wanna
guys
look at it
meet.
tomorrow and then be like, oh.
it's gonna be difficult though with how small it is. Even if I print it up larger for you to use, if a ruler to even calculate that. But I can assure you they will be 5 feet.
Okay.
Because I'll make sure they are, like to the builder and the landscaper.
Okay. Okay. Can we take like the full approval ones all in one gulp and then piece out these other two? I
You
think
sure
that's,
can.
I think that's the way that we ought to approach it. Okay.
It'll be easier for me to write.
Well, that's kind of what I thought. All right. So I'll move to grant the variances from application 2023-00369, docket 17-23-VA. The variances from UDO. Can I just use visible HVAC?
Yeah.
Okay.
I-
And the no roof on or refuse enclosure, and the light pole dispatch, or light pole setback, and the curb return. That is my motion, and also according to the findings in the staff report, which were incorporated in the motion by reference.
I'll second.
All right. I'll take a roll call vote on that real quick, when you get a chance.
Alright, Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Garrett Waller,
Yes.
Stacy Pettigrew,
Yes.
Scott Hudson,
Yes.
Chester Bennett.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. So now we've got the 2 other variances.
Which are you wanting to deal with first?
Well, I think we've got the plant foundations kind of figured out, so. So when you do a partial variance, then you have to do the conditions, and I put the conditions in. Is
Yeah,
that-
you're gonna need to specify what it is too, so you would say a partial variance to allow a 5-foot,
Okay,
foundation planting width along at least 50% of the north and east sides of the building, just as an example, if that's where
Okay.
you're going, but yeah, you'd say a partial variance, and then you would define in what way it's partial, so we know what they still have to do.
okay, okay. I move to approve, CC 2023-369, docket 1723 VA, give a partial variance, giving them a foundation planting, a 4-foot foundation planting, planting 50% of the north and east sides of the building.
Are you changing that to 5 foot or?
No, I'm gonna go with the 4, like the staff report, so that they can.
The
make
4
They
the-
can stay with 5.
Yeah, yeah, they can,
Okay.
yeah, so that they make sure that they make the requirements.
I'll second.
Okay,
Was that Grant?
yes,
I wasn't looking at
moved and seconded, take a roll call vote.
it. Andy Bailey,
Yes,
Garrett Waller,
Yes.
Stacy Pettigrew,
Yes.
Scott Hudson,
Yes.
Chester Bennett.
Yes.
all right, that leaves the lighting, which I think Good Oil's on board, but we need to get that in as some sort of structure.
Well, and you could, I mean, if they're willing to kind of, you know, allow that way, I suppose you could come down and say a partial variance, only the minimum needed to identify the station. You know, I don't know, you figure out how to do that, but you could refer back to the observatory's agreement. And if agreement can't be reached, they would have to come back, but I don't anticipate that. The observatory worked with CMG to figure out what works. I think we've already kind of discussed what minimum is, you know.
So minimum,
Well,
You certainly could
can't we
eliminate-
say a partial variance allowing the illumination as described in the staff report?
Yeah, you absolutely could. That would save you
Okay.
a whole lot of words.
Okay.
Assuming that you want to just follow exactly the way it's described. Thank you, Jen.
You go ahead.
And there's enough wiggle room in your
Yeah.
staff report.
There
that-
is.
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So, I move to,
Me too. I'd like a drink.
I move to, partially, or to approve a partial variance for, application CC 2023-00369, docket 17, 23 VA, to, approve the, UDO 424-06 that has to deal with the illumination of the canopies, using the guidelines that are incorporated in the staff report, which is incorporated in the motion by reference.
That would be 524.06, right?
Oh, 524.06D.
Okay, good.
Second.
Does that work? Okay.
Oh, was Grant my second again?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm starting to get the trend here.
I'll take a roll call vote when you're ready, Liz.
All right, Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Grant Mueller,
Yes.
Jason Pettigo,
Yes.
Scott Hutchinsberger,
Yes.
Chester Bennett.
Yep.
Motion passes.
Okay, so I'm gonna just assume that the revision you sent me reflects this.
Yeah.
I'll try to get to reviewing that later this week. I'll let you know if there's anything that doesn't seem to, but seems like you're lined up now. We just make sure we've got the final stuff tightened up and you're back to the plan commission.
Yep, next month.
June.
Yep.
On
Okay.
the development plan.
Okay, great. Thank you, board. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Liz and Kat.
I had to run the last meeting, so I wanted to let you get back to it.
Oh, yeah, thanks. All right. Are we ready for the next one? Let's dive into the next application, which is application number CC 2023-00379, docket number 18-23-SE, petition of Richard Sutton, is requesting a special exception. Can you take us through the staff report, please, Liz, when you have?
I can, and this is kind of a fun one, so I'll just warn you, it'll take me a minute to explain the history on this. The applicant is Richard Sutton. This is a special exception request for 2 additional residences in the agricultural zoning district. Both this parcel and everything surrounding it are zoned agriculturally, although it is very close to the town of Rossville. The petition site consists of 8.0732 acres of land on the north side of West State Road 26, between Milner Avenue and North County Road 330 West in section 19 of Ross Township. The petitioner would like to divide the petition site into 2 separate lots in order to make each lot buildable for a new dwelling. One of those lots will become a 4.8 roughly acre lot, and the other will be roughly 2.66, let's call that 2.7. There's a third lot that was also split from the same parcel that has an existing dwelling on it. That original dwelling, which Kat's indicated in the drawing below, was built legally on an 11-acre subdivided 1-lot minor subdivision that came to the BZA and got approval years ago. The seller chose to illegally divide it and sold it to the person living in that house now, and then the Suttons. And then when the Suttons came in to try to get a building permit for a house, they discovered that they had not only an unbuildable, but a completely illegal lot. And then we had the unfortunate job of informing the owners of the home to the back that should their house take damage or be hit by a tornado or burn down, they would not be able to get building permits to rebuild because they also have become illegal because of the split of the subdivision lot. They have to have the full 11 acres. So if the board approves the special exception requests, then they'll be going to the plan commission with a subdivision vacation request to unplat, for lack of a better word, this one lot minor subdivision, and then they will replat it into either a 3-lot minor or a 3-lot major, depending on how they configure their road accesses, subdivision, and that will bring the existing house into compliance, and then make the proposed new lots fully buildable, should the BZA approve, both of the 2 residences requested. And I would note, they they've requested 2, but you do have the option of approving 1 or 2. In all fairness, either one would make a difference, I think, in what plans are. Right now, their lot is completely unusable because it's supposed to be the extra yard for the house. So on the second page, Kat's kind of inserted a section of actually the survey drawing that was done and filed to illegally split this ground, which is not a plat, but where they kind of split up the lots and sold them off. And then there's a picture that kind of shows the woodland from 26 and what that looks like. And on the next page, kind of looking up that drive. And there is some wetland on this lot, but there is plenty of buildable area around that wetland. So the wetland is not considered a restrictive aspect of this. There is a house to the front that is not part of this, that has kind of its own history, but it's not a part of this particular subdivision. The applicant's seeking approval for 2 dwellings. There's 4 criteria in section 513.03 that the board should affirmatively find are met, specific to dwellings in the A1 district. First, that the lots shall be located such that the proximity to other dwellings, the configuration of the parent tract, and the location of creeks, ditches, and other natural features have the least negative impact on the use of agricultural equipment or the use of the property as part of a farm. So this site has woodland in the middle of it, there's some wetland, there's still plenty of room for development of other dwellings. The site is not farmed now and in fact is a residential 1-lot subdivision legally. And there's several other dwellings in the vicinity. It's also close to Rossville, so this is not a location you could put a confined feeding. 2, locating a dwelling on new lots would not require changes in road surfaces or bridges. So the main access for this site, and for the existing dwelling that's already there, is straight off State Road 26. No road upgrades or changes will be required according to a phone conversation with INDOT's permit investigator for Clinton County. The access lane from State Road 26 will have to be expanded with a hard surface installed. They do 3 lots up that lane, but that will be part of the subdivision standards that will be examined during the subdivision replat. 3, locating a dwelling on the new lot would not interfere with current agricultural practices in the adjacent area, nor substantially restrict the expansion of confined feedings and other agricultural practices. So there's no confined feedings in this immediate area. There's several other dwellings in the vicinity. It doesn't appear that adding 2 more dwellings to this group of dwellings would interfere with current agricultural practices. And given that both these dwellings are within the exterior boundaries of a existing platted residential subdivision, the question has kind of already been answered about whether this particular lot is primarily residential or primarily intense agricultural. Also, the site is less than half a mile from Rossville, and it's likely that Rossville's urban growth area boundary over time may in fact expand out further. So confined feedings are not permitted in this area already. It would be an area where we would expect to see more residences over time and eventually Rossville move on out. 4, that there are mitigating circumstances in the application regarding the above criteria. So the primary mitigating circumstances in this particular site is we're dealing with an illegal split from a lot with an existing dwelling that's now been made illegal, and because everything was supposed to remain together, but because of a previous owner it did not. So before the current owner can do anything at all, he's got to get a special exception and seek a replat. And as noted, if something happens to the existing house, it's also not rebuildable at the moment without coming through a replatting process. Since the petitioner needs to go through the entire process anyway, he's opting to request permission to split up a 3rd lot that he can also sell as buildable in the future. So that's where you get that second request for a house from. There's also 6 special exception standards in the general ordinance that apply. First, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and all the general regulations of the ordinance. So if the special exception is granted, then 2 new single-family dwellings will be permitted on the property. If this board approves the request, then this will have to go to the plan commission for a 3-lot minor or major subdivision, depending on the drive access arrangement. And that will also include the existing dwelling lot to bring it into compliance. 2, the proposed use shall not involve any element or cause any condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to any other property or persons, and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So according to the health department, they have no objections to the request. They have received soil reports that show there is septic suitability on both proposed lots. They will both require perimeter drainage that can be determined in terms of the specifics at the plan commission stage. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties do not impair health, safety, comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. So this site already has several dwellings in the area. This area is going to see continued housing growth because of its close proximity to the town of Rossville. Residences together is usually a decent blend. This already is a residential subdivision, so from that aspect as well. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood. So again, there's already several existing residences nearby. More homes should not harm the existing natural or residential environment because the proposed new dwelling lots will be spaced out well from the existing dwellings in the immediate area on fairly large lots, and they are being placed within the outer boundary of an existing subdivision. There will be 3 medium-sized lots instead of the previous 11-acre one will be the only change. 5, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. So with a 4.8 and a 2.7 acre new lot, both of those will have more than adequate area for required off-street parking, which is 2 spaces per residence. Finally, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So objective 2, policy 1 of the 2012 comprehensive plan states to minimize development on agricultural land. The Ross Township future land use plan notes this township has a variety of land uses. Ross Township will continue to experience development pressure because of its close proximity to Lafayette and the existence of State Road 28 that connects Lafayette with Kokomo. Given the location of the petition site, the fact it is already platted for residential use, and the fact that it is not practical for farm ground, it would appear this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And while not stated in here, generally speaking, it is better to increase density on land that is already designated residential rather than to chop new sections out of farm fields that cannot be returned to production. So this is also consistent with the goals of avoiding our natural resources, both of farm ground and of destroying woodland, while still allowing for more housing. And so consequently, staff recommends approval of the request for 2 new homes with the note that minor or major subdivision approval will be necessary from the plan commission if approved by this board.
Thank you, Liz. Is the petitioner here and would like to make any statements?
Yeah, I'm Mark Mills, filling in for Ron Weary of Moses Surveying, and we got a representative of the petitioner, Heather Sutton, just here to answer any question. I think the staff report states all the facts very well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, no question.
Any other comments? Go ahead. Have him step up and state your name and when you get up there.
My name is Dave Murphy, and I live adjacent to the Sutton property. What I'd like to know is on the 2 dwellings, what type of dwellings will they be?
So the ordinance states they have to be at least 24 foot wide along at least 60% of their longest size, and when you do the math, the minimum home size in Clinton County is around 850 square foot. Now, we haven't seen covenants yet, so not knowing if they're considering $500,000 large houses or if they're looking at ranches, you know, what direction they're going with that. That area is not in an overlay, like we were talking about the 28 overlay earlier, so they're not required to have like stone facades or, you know, those kinds of things unless they decide to include that in their subdivision covenants. The subdivision that's adopted there now does not have excessive aesthetic covenants. I believe the house in the back is a pole barn style house, which is permitted within those covenants. So Mrs. Sutton may be able to refer to what she's envisioning, but from an ordinance standpoint, that would be where your bottom end would be for housing size. Can you trade to the mic, just because we have people that do watch?
Definitely not in the $1 million budget, by no means. Likely, like a ranch type. Correct, no trailer, no nothing.
And we would not allow a single wide by ordinance to be placed out in that location. There's no way to approve that. So a single wide is off the table. Now a manufacturer, a modular, where you'll see a 1,500 square foot home, but it comes in rooms and they get attached onto a permanent foundation. There's nothing that prohibits that construction style where it looks like a stick-built home when it's done, but it comes in prefab and gets attached on site.
Does that answer all your questions? Okay.
I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm curious.
Your name, if you could.
Megan Nagel, we live in the back house. Are you wanting to build in between the pond and Dawn and there and then on the side, or are you wanting two dwellings on the side by the Rocky Holland area and just leave that part alone? What are you wanting to do?
Yeah. I can just show you the proposed subdivision. This is your house, right? There'll be a house here and a possible house here.
Okay.
And so we did the south and east of your house here.
Okay, and so that one you were like back.
Yeah, and that's more likely to be built sooner than this one.
Okay.
I think is.
That was my only question. Thanks.
You guys will be neighbors.
Any other discussion? Okay. Any staff or any board discussion?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Entertain a motion.
I'll be glad to make a motion to approve application CC 2023-00379, docket 1823 SE, according to the findings of the staff report, which were incorporated in the motion by reference.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we get a roll call vote when you're ready, Liz?
Andy Bailey?
Yes.
Matt Fuller?
Yes.
Stacy Pettigo?
Yes.
Scott Hutchins-Gordon?
Yes.
Chester Backus?
Yes.
Motion passes.
You need to prepare a subdivision plat and get that filed would be your next step. And you can certainly reach out if there's any questions about standards.
Cool. Good deal. All right, we've got a waiver of filing deadline of 19 days. We need to do that first.
Make a motion to have the filing waiver deadline.
We should have done that ahead of time. Oh, you'd be mad, wouldn't you?
I don't know why y'all didn't go alphabetically.
Second.
when I came in, but after a night, I'm like.
All right, I got a motion to, and I seconded it. So Chester made the motion to waive the deadline. I seconded it. Just signify by saying aye on this. Aye. All those opposed. Okay, motion passes. All right, let's dive into the last one.
Certainly you're getting a crash course on how to
I don't wanna be a part of it. I'm on a church board and they're not this bad.
All right,
So
let's.
this is the application of Adam and Laura Archibald.
No.
73 16 South County Road, 1000 East. A special exception request for a single residence in the A1 district. Both this location and everything surrounding it are zoned agriculturally. The petition site consists of 3 acres. It's a first split of a 74.24 acre parent tract on the west side of South County Road 1000 East between East State Road 38 and the Boone County line in section 17 of Kirkland Township. The petitioners would like to, I'm tired. Let's try that again. The petitioners currently reside in a house that's to the south of the petition site. The proposed lot would go from that house up to the north where there's floodplain along the very northern edge. Staff did run a point system on the proposed lot, but it did not receive enough points to be administratively approved, thus coming to the board. This proposed lot is on the eastern edge of Kirkland Township, just before you fall over into Sugar Creek. And you can see kind of from the map how that's arranged. And then there's a more zoomed in map that shows the floodplain on the next page. So you can see how it overlaps, but it's certainly not going to prevent the lot from being used. And then there's a couple pictures from both the north and the south. So you're kind of able to see this area that juts in toward the road between the existing farmstead and that creek area. So again, similar to the last case, we've got 4 criteria that we need to look at specific to dwellings in the A1 district. First, that the lot shall be located such that proximity to other dwellings, the configuration of the parent tract, or the location of creeks, ditches, and other natural features have the least negative impact on the use of agricultural equipment or the use of the property as part of a farm. So this site sits up to the front of a parcel of farm ground from which it will be split. It has farm ground on the northern portion. It's an area that's not particularly viable farm ground, and it currently requires extra maneuvering with the existing residential lot to the south. The proposed lot would square off the parcel and eliminate extra maneuvering. It may also illuminate if it's at night. 2, locating a dwelling on the new lot would not require changes in road surfaces or bridges. So this site is on an unpaved road, but it is well maintained and it serves farm equipment for the farmland and 2 other dwellings in the area. It doesn't appear a single new home in the area will require any road upgrades or changes. 3, locating a dwelling on the new lot would not interfere with current agricultural practices in the adjacent area and would not substantially restrict the expansion of confined feeding and other agricultural practices. So the location does not appear to have any confined feedings within the nearby area, with the note that we don't have full data and imaging on the Boone County side. And the proposed lot would eliminate the maneuvering that occurs around the existing home lot. It doesn't appear a new dwelling would interfere with agricultural practices to any substantial degree. 4, there are mitigating circumstances in the application of the above rating criteria. The primary mitigating circumstances in the lot does have some floodway fringe on it. It's not valuable land for farming operations despite being zoned A1. And it is staff's understanding that petitioners currently live next to the proposed site and are involved with farming the land. So they would like to build a new house to reside near the area that they're farming. Next, we have 6 special exception standards from the general ordinance. First, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and all the general regulations of the ordinance. So if you grant special exception as a board, then a single-family home would be permitted on the property. However, the lot will need to be approved by the plan commissioner for a 1-lot minor subdivision before it will be fully buildable. 2, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to other property or persons and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So according to the health department, they have no objections to the request. They do have a soil sample on file and have determined the lot is suitable for septic. It will require a perimeter drainage outlet And I would hazard to guess that main outlet is probably gonna outlet into the creek, given what the topography of the land is. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped, so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties do not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. So this site does have a small area of floodway fringe on it, but there's still plenty of room for a buildable lot. While it is in the A1 district, the proposed lot specific configuration is perhaps a little more practical to building a home on than it is for farming. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood. So there's already 2 residences in the vicinity. 1 more home should not harm the natural and residential environment. Also, one of those 2 existing homes in the vicinity is where the petitioners currently reside. 5, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. Like most residential requests, there's more than adequate area for 2 off-street parking spots. And finally, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and shall be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So again, we return to the same objective 2, policy 1, that states to minimize development of agricultural land. Kirkland is designated primarily for agriculture with a bit of rural residential development. Kirkland, like Rossville, will also experience continuing development pressure, but due to Indianapolis to the south as it continues to push north towards us and is now about 20 minutes away, rather than due to Lafayette. Since the proposed site, due to its configuration and floodplain areas, are not great farm ground, it would appear the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Also would note they've kind of taken out the minimum to square that off. They haven't pushed back into the field beyond that. Consequently, staff recommends approval of the request for 1 new dwelling and notes that minor subdivision approval will also be necessary from the Plan Commission if this request is approved by the board.
Thank you, Liz. Petitioner, have anything to add?
Where I want to build is kind of on some high ground, it's kind of clayey, it's not real good. And then it slopes down towards the creek, and I'd like to build right on the edge of that slope because I'm gonna have a basement, I have to have egress, I have to have windows. So I'm thinking right on that edge would be the best place. And then I really only needed 2 acres maybe to build the house, which wouldn't have required special exception, but I was afraid that where they put the septic bed, the finger system, was gonna be beyond that 2-acre lot.
Sure.
So I said, let's just go ahead and do 3. It's gonna be headed down into that floodplain, but that's where, when they took the soil samples, they said that's where it's suitable.
Sure.
Is down closer into that floodplain, so
Sounds good.
that's where I'm at.
Cool. Nobody else here, so.
Nothing.
So, any board discussion? Okay. I just have one question. What was the points? Why did, I'm just curious real quick.
Because he was doing a
3 is what kicked it out. That's what I wondered. Okay.
Oh,
Yep.
3 acres, you
Yep.
lose points for anything more than
Than
2
two.
under 20, and it's
Yep.
a pretty good amount of points
Yep.
because we want to minimize the waste of extra yard space that could have stayed tillable.
Sure.
If we would have done 2, we would have made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I scored it at 2.
But then,
He scored enough, but he, like I said, he opted that he wanted to have that extra lot.
And where the septic bed's gonna be, is gonna be out into that, between that 2 and 3 acre mark is where they're gonna put the finger system.
and in fairness, when you look at this configuration, you can kind of see it, because if you only made it 2 acres, you would increase the awkwardness of what you'd
Oh,
have to
yeah.
farm
What-
ground
yeah,
significantly.
spraying and planting
Like
would be a pain.
without any real gain in saving farm ground with what's,
No, I
Yeah, so-
agree, I understand that.
Yep.
And
but yes, if he'd gone 2 acres, sometimes that stuff makes a difference. But in general speaking, that divides a good line. You know, the point isn't that if it comes to the BZA, it's terrible development, just that something about it wasn't a no-brainer. And if you rolled the dice over 100 sites, you know, with that dividing line, you'd wanna see more of them than you wouldn't.
Okay, cool. All right. I'll make a motion. I move to approve, application CC, 2023-00383, docket number 19-23-SC, according to the findings in the staff report, which were incorporated in this motion by reference.
Second.
Roll call vote when you get a chance, Liz.
That was Andy, and I'm sorry, I missed my second.
Scott.
I was busy thinking about what I was writing. Sorry, Scott, I changed you out. Okay,
I'm used to
Andy
that.
Bailey,
Yes.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Stacy Pettico.
Yes.
Scott Hudson,
Yes.
Lester Francis.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any new business?
We do not.
Okay, good.
Thank heavens.
Next scheduled meeting will be June 27th, 2023. Look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, we're adjourned.
Do they normally last this long?
No, this is a long one.
We have a few a year that go this long, it just depends on,